Ding ding, it is 11 o'clock, so welcome. I know you can see half of me, that's probably a good thing. Welcome to the second cook along. So we're gonna make veg curry and chapatis, dead simple. This curry is a very basic version of the curry. It really is one of those things that you can look in the fridge and sort of see what there is, and make the curry from that point. All right, so the first thing we've got to do, because we've got potatoes and carrots, because they're a root vegetable, they're really hard. All right, if we just put it in the curry, we'd have to cook them a long time for it to be cooked. All right, so we're actually going to kind of half cook them first and then add it to the curry. All right, so we can do the root veg, which is the potatoes and the veg. Pardon me, potatoes and the carrots. That's why I'm holding the carrot. All right, so let's just peel the carrot. If you haven't got one of these, I would, but literally a couple of quid. They're called a speed peeler, and they are, guess what, really quick. So let's peel the potato as well. So what's going to happen is we're actually going to throw potatoes and the carrots into water and cook them a little bit first. Look at that, I picked a great potato, didn't I? Never mind. So, ultra quick. So let's peel these first. Remember, if you're cooking this with bean, be nice and clean. I have washed my hands for 20 seconds as well. Okay, so let's get rid of all that. I've just got a bin around here. Can't see. Right, so what we're going to do then, we're going to put this in the saucepan here. Okay, so again, there's no, as long as everything is cut in roughly the same size, I do mean roughly. All right, I'm literally going to do this in nice oblong, in slices, not oblong, in slices. Do notice, I'm just going to very quickly whiz this round, like that. Okay, so peel the carrot. Best way to do this, I would suggest, is do it on the slant. Notice the method, so it's the claw grip, you're hanging on to the carrot, and with the knife, I'm doing a rocking motion. All right, you should never sort of do that, that's a bad idea, right? And ruin your knife. All right, so in. Okay, let's get rid of the end bit. So the carrots go into a saucepan, which I'll turn it around in a second. Then the potatoes, I'm going to cut these into cubes. Now people struggle with this sometimes, cutting potatoes into cubes. The safest way, I would suggest, is to make a flat bit. Because at the minute it's rolling around because the potato's round. Is to make a flat bit. So to cut one bit off the bottom, so you have a flat bottom, stand it up, right? So it's not now wiggling around. Then you want to cut it down, because I want to cut this into cubes. Bridge hold, like that, lay them flat, and just cut them into squares, all right? You try and make them as even as you can. Put them in a saucepan also, so we're going to cook them at the same time as the carrot. Okay, so boom, boom. Only going to cook these about 5 minutes just to start cooking them. Then of course I can salvage my potato, all right? So thanks, off, not off, but basically what happened is the potato in the field got hit, or an animal started to have a little nibble at it. That's what causes the decay. Not a problem, just cut it out. All right, so I've made the flat bottom, just cut, probably be okay, yeah. All right, we cut those again into even sized pieces. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna start making the, curry, and then I'm going to go on to the chapatis and go back to the curry. Right, so there is that bit of water, cold water. Not that much water, and just stick that onto a heat. Which I'll choose the right one. On the highest heat, one that's to boil for around 5 minutes. All right, now what we're now going to do, let me just turn this a little bit more, is we might as well get the cauliflower and the onion ready, right, just because then it's done. So don't forget the onion. Here is an onion, there's the root. Okay, so all you want to do is you simply want to take the top off, not the root end, just the top, so the root's still intact. Don't touch the root at all, because I made a flat bottom. put that flat, bridge hold, knife in all the way through, peel. Either just peel the brown paper off, or a bit lazy like me, just go to the next layer along. Notice the root's still intact. What we then do, I will just get rid of the vegetables briefly, and then we're gonna get the chapatis kind of ready. Then we go back to the curry, and then finish the chapatis, and boom, we're done. So here's our onion. Root is still intact. What I'm now going to do is make some slits in. All right, so notice that claw grip again. I'm holding onto the onion and I'm putting the knife in. The best way to do this is put it in, sort of slide it backwards. All right, and all I then do is just cut down that way, and you get. I want fairly chunky for this. All right, you want to keep the veg a similar, you know, a loosely similar size. Okay, that's the onion. Now the cauliflower. Cauliflower can be a pain. Here is my cauliflower. Best way to do any idea to cauliflower? It's not difficult, but it can be something of a pain. You got all these leaves around the edge, so what I would do is get a smaller knife. Oh look, there's a spider there. Don't that in our curry, do we? So, Rhubarb put me off completely, you know, having a spider suddenly attack me. Little knife, put the knife into the root and just go or follow it around. And what that will do two things. That will remove the core and it will remove the leaves at the same time. There's the core. Take the leaves off. Obviously, you know, this was like a value cauliflower, I think, so it's fairly dinky. And all you then do, you can literally just snap, and then it just grows naturally in these little kind of trees. And a bit of brown on it. Right, actually called florets, technically. Now, as I said, I did say we want these roughly the same size. So what I mean is, if I put that in the curry, that's not going to cook at the same speed as that one. All right, so we just need to kind of even it all out slightly. All right, so with a knife, just make sure, I mean, just roughly, you haven't got to measure it with a tape measure, but we just want it roughly even. Like that. Okay, just like that. So hopefully you see that now. So my carrots and potatoes are actually coming up to starting to boil. So at that point I give them 5 minutes. Here is all this ready. All right, it's mise en place. I think I said on another video, just preparation. I'm going to put this aside. No, it's the world's biggest board as well. I'm going to put this just to the side over there that you can't see. Just by the way, if you're kind of serious about cooking, this is just a piece of kitchen towel that's been wet, and the point of that is that it stops the board slipping. All right, so because that's really annoying as well and dangerous if you're chopping. Right, so literally a piece of kitchen towel and just get that wet. Or people use a tea towel sometimes, put it under a board and it stops it slipping around. What we're now going to do is, let me just give the table a quick wipe, is we're going to get the chapati mixture ready. Now this is ultra easy. And it uses 2 kinds of flour. All right, so it uses actually, I need to get some plain flour, I've got self-raising in there. We need some wholemeal flour and we need some plain flour. So here's my scales. So a chapati is just a flat bread that would be used in India often just to pick the food up. So rather than use knives and forks, they would use that form of like bread to pick it up and eat it. All right, so they do use knives and forks, of course, in India, but often they would use that bread. It's not a leavened bread. It's not. There's nothing. There's no raising agent in there. That's why I need to change that for plain flour. So it's literally like a tortilla. Okay, so. It's equal parts, so 140 grams of wholemeal flour. See if I can see my display, 140 grams. The wholemeal flour, actually, if you're just using white flour, you won't probably need all the water, all right, because, sorry about that. Different flours taking different amounts of water, right, so we are going to change the flour or flours rather than the wholemeal in the plain. Just don't chuck all the water in. Right, you need to make sure you measure it. So, get rid of that. I'll be back in 1 second. I'm going to get some plain flour. As you can see, short of plain flour. Right, so we then want 140 of wholemeal, 140 of plain. It does kind of matter actually that you have wholemeal, to be honest, because it does affect the flavour and it will be quite a bit dull really, just with plain flour. So 140, so it's 140 of wholemeal, 140 of plain. Just going to put some salt in. I've got some salt here. Teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to guess a teaspoon of salt. And then we want 2 tablespoons of olive oil, which go in. All right, I've got some tablespoons here. My veg is boiling, if you can hear it. So 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. Okay, what we now need to do is we're going to add some water. We need some hot water. We've got hot water from the tap, about 180 millilitres or mLs. Okay, so let's get that from the tap, hot water. Right, so although the recipe says 180, don't put 180 in straight away. Hi Caroline. Don't put it all in immediately, all right, because otherwise you'll find it could be too much, all right? So put some in, move that to the side. It's normally useful to use, so we're going to get this mixed. If you are making a bread, but the basic type of bread, what we're looking for is a mixture that holds together and isn't sticky, but is, you know, it's got a bit of bounce to it, if that kind of makes sense. Now I'm gonna have to add a bit more water. I can just sense that. Let me just get your hands in. Right, now this is where you need to adapt. So you know, I did do 180, but I've got some water left in there, and actually it's sticking to my hands. Now that would indicate to me that that is actually, I put a little bit too much water in. So, didn't listen to my own advice. Story of life, eh? So, I'm gonna have a little bit of flour and put that on the table. And I'm just gonna incorporate that in. All right, so what we are looking for is a soft dough which is elastic but not sticky. Okay, so I'm making chapatis, right? So I'm at the minute, just to recap, I'm cooking or half cooking my potatoes and my carrots because they're a root veg, and then we're finished making the curry. At the minute, I'm just making my chapati dough. Right, so bread, any sort of bread needs to be a little bit soft but not sticky. If it's sticking to your hand, that's not a major problem, just kind of get it off. People panic about that, but that's not an issue. And what we want to do is we want to generate the gluten, all right? So we are going to knead this very, very, very lightly for about just a few minutes. If it's sticking too much on your hands, just add a tiny bit of flour. Don't add loads because it will, you know, change the recipe. So give that a quick mix. Okay, that actually is probably enough, right? So you see that? Nice and play doughy. I'm just going to put that back in the bowl. We haven't got to let it rise or anything, but it does need to rest just for a few minutes. I'm now going to wash my hands. And I'm going to wipe the table. Right, I'm now going to go back to the curry, because these have had, I don't know, what, 3-4 minutes? So they would be half cooked, third cooked, along those lines. Let me just take it off 1 second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera slightly, just so that you can see half and half. There we go. If I put my knife in, what we're looking for, it's still holding the shape and the knife is actually going in, but there's a little bit of resistance there. That's about half cooked. I'm now going to drain these, all right? So I'm going to go to the sink and drain them in colander. Remember with the colander, never hold the colander, right? That's a really bad idea, right? So never hold the colander, put the colander in the sink and then drain. Back on the heat, use the same saucepan, why not? The heat will burn off any liquid that was in there. So, a bit more oil, about a tablespoon of oil. What we're now going to do is I want to fry the onion. Right, so while that's happening, quick recap. So I've got my cooked potatoes and carrots. I've got my broccoli here. I've actually got some spinach. You could have peas. The tomatoes, it says on the recipe, is actually half a tin of tomatoes, right? It's not the big one, it's actually the small one. We also need to make up with some liquid in there as well, right, which I'm going to do now, all right, which is 300 millilitres of water. So 300 mils of water. Okay, 300 mils of water. And then literally I've got a chicken stock cube. Now this is veggie, you could use vegetarian, absolutely fine, a veggie stock cube. Right, you just want them to soften. With an onion, you want that sweetness to come out. Yeah, there is a cook along, so but do not worry, you can always look at the YouTube video later when I upload it, not a problem. Alright, so all I've done so far is I've made the chapati dough, 140 grams of wholemeal flour, 140 grams of plain, pinch of salt, 2 tablespoons of water, and 180 mils of hot water, and mix it to a dough. I then pre-cooked, or part-cooked my carrots and potatoes. I'm now just frying my onion. What I'm now going to do is I am going to add the, the curry powder, sorry. So literally 1 tablespoon of curry powder. I'm not great with heat at all, bit of a wuss. So I'm just using mild curry powder. Use hot curry powder, medium curry powder, 1 tablespoon. That goes in. What is important here actually is that you fry the onion and the curry powder together for 30 seconds a minute. The reason for that is that curry powder's got lots of spices in, and actually by frying off those spices you get tons more flavour. Alright, so it does actually again matter. Right, so that goes in. Literally we're just going to do the liquidy stuff now. So there's my half tin of tomatoes, right? Small tin, they go in. Like that. I'm now going to put my water in. Bubble, bubble. Stock cube, basically everything else, right? Easiest thing in the universe. So everything else, whether it's veggie or, don't go beef, that'd be a bit weird, but veggie or chicken is fine. Right, now, going to put in the, now actually hopefully again use your common sense here, is that if you're concerned that your sauce is not too big, then you think, okay, I'm going to change it into a bigger one. I think I should be okay. And I'm going to put in all my cauliflower actually. And then I've got my carrots and my potatoes, which are still hot. Just going to put those on top. Okay. That, believe it or not, is it. But we want those flavours to meld and mould, all right? So we're going to simmer that for about 5 minutes or until the cauliflower is to the way that you want it. And then the last thing is the peas or the spinach. So there's 100 varieties for this, and you've got to use common sense. So if you're using other root veg, I don't know, you might use parsnips, I suppose, or something similar to that, which is quite hard. You'll need to cook them first and then put them in softer veg. You'll put them in seconds, if that kind of makes sense. All right, and then any kind of leafy like herbs or spinach or peas that literally take a minute's cooking, you can leave them right to the end. So we want to turn this down to a simmer. I mean, if we boil it too much, then it will burn on the bottom and we don't obviously want that. So I'm going to turn that down. I'm going to move all this out of the way and then we can start rolling out the chapatis. So that's that. Let's move that. Because I'm using an electric oven, electric cooker, it does take a little bit of time to, what's the word, cool down and stop bubbling like mental. Right, we're now going to make the chapatis. Let's move this around, or finish making them. What we need to do here then is we are going to get a bit of flour on the table. You could use plain or you know, the wholemeal flour or the white flour to roll out. And we're going to cut this into 10 pieces. Alright, easy way to do that, cut it in half, so you've got to make 5, and then just kind of mathematically work it out, alright? So 1, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, if you think your edges a bit, you know, not quite equal, just try and make them equal. All we now do is I'm now going to get my frying pan and I'm going to put it over here. I'll show you in a second, but I'll put it over here and just put it on the heat with no oil in at all. So you dry fry these. All right, so these are all dry fried. All right. I'm going to get myself a rolling pin. And all we want to do is just roll these out into a rough, round tortilla like shape. Now these, you can make these bigger, so 10 doesn't make, well 10 makes 10, but if you wanted them obviously quite, you know, much bigger, you could do it less. Yeah, so do it into 8 to get bigger ones or whatever the case may be. Right, there we go. So cauliflower. Hopefully you can see how completely easy this is, right? Really no effort at all. Quick taste. Nice and good. Right, so the cauliflower is actually cooked, right? I can put my knife in there. So what I'm going to do now is put the kind of the softer things in, the leafier things in. Yeah, when it's high temperature. You've got peas, put a handful of peas. You've got spinach, just put a few handfuls of spinach in. As you know, this entire bag of spinach could go in here, and you wouldn't, I mean, you would know it's in there, but just because spinach wilts down like mental. How about that? People just keep trying to call me, which is a little bit annoying. Right, so the pan is getting hotter now for the chapatis, and when we start cooking them, you'll see they literally take a minute per side, and then we're done. So I don't need to see that. That's what we're looking for on one side, but it's charred. Okay, so that's the sign. All right, so we're good. Right, the pan is getting nice and hot now. Try and keep the spinach in the pot, always good. Don't forget, if you make this, send me some pictures. Love to see your results. I'm just going to leave that alone, not prodding it too much. Just a little bit longer there. Right, I think we're good, so I'm going to take this one off. Remember, tiny bit of oil just helps it along really. Bit of tissue just to rub it around. Another one goes in. Do you see the heat coming off this now? That's actually what you want, don't panic about that. You want to see a bit of smoke when you do this, otherwise it will just sit and look at you otherwise. Right, so the spinach is now wilted. I'm going to turn the heat off on here. Just move it over to the side. Oops, 1 second. Right, as you can now see, it's, I'm not sure if you can see from the video, but it is now smoking, which is kind of where we should have been a while ago. But hopefully you can see, with really very few ingredients, so what's in there, 5, 6 in there, 2, 3 ingredients in here. All right, very basic. All right, so lots, there we go, that's exactly what we want, you see that? So that's taken, what, 30 seconds, and that's nice and blistered. Just gonna do a couple just to show you, and I'll finish them off once the video is done. All right, so what I'm gonna do is, let me just get these out of the way for 1 second, so I can clean the table. Okay, so we're good. Dum, dum, dum. Let's have another look. Nice and charred, all good. Let's turn it off. Actually, I'll leave it on for a second so we can do some more later. Let's move the camera, plate it up. So, 1 chapati, 2 chapati, 3 chapati more. Let's roll the spoon. Let's dish some out. So what I do is I dish it out separately in case I dribble it everywhere, which is probably lightly. Nice and fresh, no additives, no E numbers. You could, of course, add some meat in here or some tofu. If you did meat, obviously a meat curry in this kind of way, you would do the meat first or the protein first. And then once the meat's cooked, you'd then add kind of everything else. Okay, so there we go. Dead simple veg curry and homemade chapatis. Extremely inexpensive. Probably make a family of 4 for probably £4. Maybe a few p more, but very, very cheaply. Lots of ways to adapt it. So I hope you enjoyed that.